The De Lima is a stone of power, and it offers you goodwill and success, and it moves.
That's weird.
And it glows at nighttime.
It's like the heart of the mountain in The Hobbit.
They're extremely valuable. If somebody does own one, they might not even tell you.
But the De Lima has to choose you. And so oftentimes you don't find it, it'll find you. When you do find it, you have to kind of perform this ritual. You have to cut your hand and you have to put your blood on the De Lima and grasp it. If you don't, it'll disappear.
The Wild Bros are back in the basement for a second go-round.
This is all the blurry stories in one. You've got ancient civilizations, giant bones, pagan traditions in the jungle, and there's mystery stones involved.
And if you love stories like this and everything we do here at Blurry Creatures, check out blurrycreatures.com/members. And that's where you can get all kinds of extra perks and really dive deep into the Blurryverse, whether you want more episodes. There's a back catalog of more than 100 members-only episodes. You get your own personal RSS feed for Blurry Creatures, access to all of our Blurry Creatures members-only communities, whether it be Facebook, Discord, early advance tickets to all of our events, in-studio events, Blurry Cons, trips out of the country, etc. And then, of course, you get discounts on all of your Blurry merch you could have. Check it out, blurrycreatures.com/members. For all those people that support us, you're keeping the lights on here at Blurry Creatures, and we're grateful.
All right, let's get the Wild Brothers on the show.
Over the years, Luke, we've had many people send messages to us and say, hey, I saw this, I saw that. And we have the Wild Brothers back in studio, and you guys lived in a remote part of the world, Indonesia, and you had a lot of experiences as missionaries over a 17-year period, and you got to learn more than the average person who just shows up on vacation, sees something weird and leaves. But a weird part of the world and an entire history of things that go bump in the night. But you send us an email. There's like 20 things on here that we could talk about. I don't know where we start with this one.
Well, I think we start where we left off.
Dinosaurs and
if you're jumping in here, listen to the first episode we did with Morgan and Hudson to really tell their story. You guys spent 17 years with an animistic people group in Papua, Indonesia, which is on the other side of Papua New Guinea. Your family was a missionary family to this unreached people group, and with it, they lived a very supernatural reality, and you brought the gospel there. And our first episode with you guys goes through your experiences growing up in the jungle and bringing, the Great Commission to the edges of the known world. And we teased a bit about some of the things that we would go into. And so I want to just start, because at this point, if you've listened, you know the story of the Wild Brothers and the Wild family.
You didn't just like show up and then leave. You immersed yourself, you learned the language, you helped them write their own language. And so over those years, you've been told a lot of things and you had some firsthand experiences. So we'd love to hop in. Obviously, we talk a lot about giants, Bigfoot, things like that, but you've experienced some other creatures that kind of are outside of the things that we talk about, but are also blurry creatures. So what do you think was the most, like the moment where you kind of felt like, okay, there's something else going on here, and some of the cryptid
our love for cryptozoology really began, as little boys watching like documentaries about, would-be dinosaurs in the Congo and, this and that. And since we did live in such an amazing stretch of virgin jungle, you can imagine as little boys, our imaginations were going crazy. Like what could be out here? Because literally no naturalist, no Western had ever explored those.
Well, in most
jungles.
treks of jungle, like not even the local Wano people had ever ventured into like the heart of Wano land. The jungle is the most like inhospitable place imaginable. Like it's so hard to penetrate. Coming here, I feel like you could almost hike anywhere because the forest, there's big pine trees, you just walk between them. And the jungle, it's like centuries of trees that have fallen over each other, been consumed by moss, and now have almost created like a false ground. And so there's like pitfalls everywhere, and it's just thorns and thistles, and it's like you cannot penetrate it unless you take days to hack through with machete and make traversed
areas would be path, actually large trees that they'd fell, and those would be the highways. So every you'd be there might be 10 feet of broken logs and moss underneath you, but people are walking across these giant felled logs, and those are the roads, because it just makes it fast.
And it's like one big trampoline, everything bounces. Right. So it's almost like surfing. Like when you hike in the jungle, you have to just go with the flow.
Slow,
If you try to be like stable and find sturdy ground, you're breaking through something, you're falling in a hole.
So
who knows like what's out there in the depths of the jungle.
Village and live in the trees.
Exactly. Pretty much. And actually many tribes do. They live up in the trees.
Yeah. So if that is a backyard, our imaginations, were crazy, and we thought there could be all sorts of discoveries. So as we got older, we ventured out with our friends, and one of our early fascinations into cryptozoology was the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine. I'm not sure if you familiar with that, if your viewers have heard about that, but it was a very unusual creature, kind of a hybrid between a dog and a kangaroo.
That was
a marsupial
Luke's
dog.
nickname on the basketball court.
Okay,
actually,
sick. That's awesome. So the thylacine, went extinct. I think mostly in the 40s. Then I think the last one died in captivity, and I forgot what year it was. Was it like in the 60s in a zoo?
It was like the 50s, yeah.
And since then, the government in Australia and Tasmania has had a massive price out there for anybody who can find proof. Millions of dollars. And so as young boys, what fascinated us was that
just a tiger. Just the lost tiger.
Well, we happened to live on the island that was once connected via land bridge to Australia and Tasmania.
Sure.
And so there's been fragments of Tasmanian tiger skulls found on that island. So at one point, there was Tasmanian tigers in the jungle. And so we growing up thought, there could probably be one out here, especially because our friends had all these rumors and stories of wild dog population that roamed the high mountains in Wano land. And so that was kind of our obsession, especially for a 4-year stint. We literally went on a crazy adventure of just trying to document what do we have in the area. And after setting trail cams, hiking, lots of research, lots of, like any person trying to find a cryptic creature, we deduced by the end of it that it wasn't a Tasmanian tiger, but it was instead the New Guinea singing dog. And that was a cryptic creature in a way because scientists for a lot of years came to the conclusion that New Guinea singing dog, it's almost like the earliest dog kinds, what people kind of assume, small dingo-like dogs, that they had interbred with village dogs to extinction. But we discovered that in our area, there's actually thriving populations up in the remote mountains.
How were they,
so it wasn't the Tasmanian tiger, but
singing?
Yeah, like a really melodious singing.
Yeah.
Like they just howl and sing. But they're ferocious. Like the locals are scared of them. And if you listen to the first episode, we talked about the old witch dog, Dr. Bogu.
Yeah.
He loved telling stories about these, but he described people like defenseless. He told a story. He's like, if you find yourself out there in the trail, he's like, are man birds? Do man have wings that they can fly away? Like, no, you're stuck on the ground. And you'll be looking, to the right, to the left. And then all of a sudden it'll be on your back. And he's like, nothing but blood. So we always heard these horror stories about this legendary canine, the Mbakenge. And but our house was positioned on a knoll, and way out in the background is what we call Misty Mountain, Beludok Mountain, and it's just always shrouded in fog, and so you can rarely see the actual top of it unless it's a clear morning, and that's the dwelling place of the Mbakenge. And so it's whoa, one day we'd love to venture there.
Yeah.
So as we got older, we took 2 expeditions to the peak of Misty Mountain, and along the whole is just a jagged, ridge line. You reach part of the summit, the base of the mountain. It's a ridge line all the way up
to about 12,000 feet elevation. And we're in the this is tropical. So it's amazing that you can have mountains that high.
Over 12,000 feet high. And the whole way up, it's nothing but Mbakenge scratch marks, because the moss there's a certain type of subalpine moss that's really firm. And so the dogs just running back and forth just scratch it up. And just nothing but carcasses the whole way of different marsupials that they've eaten. Mm-hmm. And they're really choicey. They just eat the meat and they'll leave a lot of the intestines and organs.
They have so much.
And so we would just be walking and just find rotting carcasses and scat and bones and the whole way. And we just keep going into the lair of the Mbakenge. And believe it or not, I came face to face with one at nighttime because I loved going out at nighttime. Everything is nocturnal in the jungle. Mm-hmm. And so most of the wildlife you see is at nighttime. So I was investigating around our campsite one night, and just the fire was flickering the distance. I kind of kept out the center and just did a big perimeter. And I was walking around and it's just so quiet, nothing out there. And usually you can hear stuff, up in the trees or whatnot, and you can find it pretty easily. But I got to a point where I was I feel I'm being watched. And I was up on the top of this log, and I turn around, and sure enough, these giant glowing eyes, and I just see these big furry ears, huge puffy tail, it just been stalking me for I don't know how long. It just my heart just stopped.
How big is this?
They're pretty decent sized dogs.
Way size bigger, like a lab?
Yeah, or I say lab, or the lab's probably a good description. Maybe a small German Shepherd,
or a small golden retriever, maybe.
They're much larger and more intimidating, the domesticated dogs. And it ran straight towards me. and I just like froze. It was like the fight or flight instinct, and I couldn't decide. I just froze on top of the log, and it looked like it was just gonna pounce straight up at my jugular, but instead it dove down underneath the log and just vanished.
Huh. Wow.
So he was just observing me. Probably the first human he had ever seen. It was like, what is a fire? What is this dude out with a flashlight?
Was the color of the eyes, though, and that was kind of the give off that it was a New Guinea singing dog, because they have very distinct
blue eyes,
blue and green eyes. Yeah,
like eye shine is blue.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good thing that Sasquatch just goes barefoot out there, Luke, because we wouldn't have a great name of the big guy, Bigfoot.
He's not worried about his foot being comfortable, but when we're at work and doing work outside, that's something we should absolutely care about.
We need some boots.
And that's why we chose Brunt workwear. I think it was most surprising to pull these out and feel how lightweight and flexible these things were. But when you put on your feet, it's like maybe the most comfortable work boot that I've ever worn.
And if you're someone out working every day and you're putting your feet to the test, you want Brunt boots on your old dogs.
On those barking dogs, right? And you and I both got the Marin, just a traditional work boot that's fantastic. And the founder grew up in the trades. Eric Gerard, he built Brunt because the legacy brands stopped listening and became fashion companies. And these are tough and comfortable boots.
No weeks of blisters. These things have zero break-in. They feel good right when you pull them out of the box and put them on your foot.
And they got options for every job, Nate. They got waterproof, safety toe, soft toe, heavy duty, lace up or pull on. Whatever it is that you need to do out there with that blue collar, getting things done, they've got the boot for you. And right now they're celebrating America's 250th anniversary with a special collection of limited edition gear. Quantities are limited right now. If you've been thinking about upgrading your workwear, now's the time to do it.
That's right.
What's amazing about Brunt as well is they have a risk-free trial. They actually let you wear their boots to work, real job site days, not walking around your house. If they're not right for you, send them back for a full refund. That's a 100% risk-free trial. So stop overpaying for workwear that doesn't last. And for a limited time, our listeners can get $10 off by going to bruntworkwear.com/blurry, then use code blurry at checkout. This is top-tier gear for an incredible price. Plus, with a risk-free trial, there's no reason not to give them a shot. That's bruntworkwear.com/blurry, code blurry.
That was kind of the early years of us like getting into cryptozoology and realizing like, wow, we have, again, we talked on the last episode how, we made a lot of discoveries in entomology, and we have a lot of, bugs and beetles and moths. And
how old are you when you're on this trip?
I think it was like 13, 15.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not that old then.
Not that old, no. But we made a lot of discoveries in entomology, and then started getting into more large mammals. And what we found out, which was fascinating, is that even though the Wano people themselves were literally the masters of the jungle, there's actually cryptic creatures in the jungle that they didn't even know about, because up till fairly recently, they didn't have flashlights. So if you don't have flashlights, when it gets dark, you're in your house sleeping, unless you're out on a hunting trip when it's full moon. So there's actually, during all the years of living with them, we actually made some discoveries with them that they were like, I didn't know this existed here. Yeah. So because of that, we had a strong suspicion that there could be things out here that even they don't know about.
And man, those Mbatange, these New Guinea singing dogs, were so elusive. Like we'd find their tracks, we'd find salt licks where they frequently come to, and we'd set these trail cameras way out in the jungle, leave them for like months at a time, go back.
We get pictures of cassowary,
and
all sorts of
those
animals,
dogs, they just like either could smell us out or whatever, and we'd literally find fresh paw prints, and they would skirt the trail cam and just like
that they knew was there.
They're just smart
and
crafty. So we still think there very well could be a population of thylacines living out there, because their food source in Tasmania were wallabies. Yeah. And I think wallabies, small birds, small mammals, the same like food source are there in Papua. We have they would eat emus or ostriches. Yeah. In Papua we have cassowaries, extremely tall, like 6-foot birds. Yeah. Tons of different marsupials and rodents, and so the food source is the same. Did the New Guinea singing dog like eat them out or chase them out to extinction, or are there still pockets of them? Because that's what happened
in Australia and Tasmania. It was actually the ranchers, their dogs that actually started chasing down the thylacines, and
they shoot them because they eat their cattle.
Yeah, so the actual domesticated dogs helped drive them to extinction. So,
but during like I'd say like the zenith of our intriguing cryptics and stuff, there was a time where something came to our mountaintop that we didn't know whether it was natural or supernatural. Mm-hmm. And it intrigued the entire village. Like It was called the De Lima, and it like arrived to our village, Mokondoma, and no one knew how to interpret this. And this is post-church, so there's believers. It's always really interesting asking our fellow Wano believers their interpretation on things in the natural world, because they came out of an animistic like a worldview where, you know, spirits control everything. And so they're very discerning of like, man, what's from God, what's good,
like
what's true,
what's nefarious,
and what's evil, you know, because they came out of that worldview. And so
what's the De Lima?
The De Lima is a stone of power. Think of like the ring in like Lord of the Rings. Like it is a ring of power that is attracted to you, and you are attracted to the De Lima, and it offers you goodwill and success. Almost like a good luck charm, but more so, kind of on steroids.
Where did this come from?
So the De Lima is a stone. It looks like a stone, but it doesn't. It's somewhat large, kind of like a lime.
Probably like the size of a golf ball. That's how they describe it.
Golf ball, yeah, but extremely heavy.
It's like the heart of the mountain in The Hobbit.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it weighs about, they often say like a kilo, 2 pounds ish. So think of like a stone, but being like
so heavy.
2 pounds, like extremely heavy for just a little rock. And it moves. It has like autonomy. What? And it glows at nighttime. It emits several different colors. There's some that are yellow. There's some that are green. There's some that are blue. That's its range. And it moves. And so
every time you hear it, it's just a light clinking. Almost like, if you're on like a riverbed and you have river rocks that are connecting or magnets, that's what it sounds like as it clinks along the ground and moves.
You've seen it?
Very slowly.
So
I've never seen one.
I haven't seen it. We have really, really good friends who are believers that have seen it, have friends that own them. But this is more of a lowland phenomenon. So the Wano territory, it's like half of it's like lowland swamps that hit foothills that then go up to these really high highlands. So we always lived up in the highlands. And De Lima was not prevalent up in the highlands. It was more of a lowland phenomenon. But the Wano people knew about it because they had family down the lowlands. Sometimes they would frequent the lowlands. And so when the first De Lima appeared up in Mokondoma, it like shocked everyone. So kind of the legend of the De Lima goes back to, this rock. It's extremely beautiful. They describe it as, and again, I haven't seen one myself, but they describe it as looking ordinary, kind of at first glance, but being round. So that's already kind of unusual. It's nice and round, smooth. But when you actually peer into it, almost like a crystal, in the center of it, they describe almost as like a prism that like reflects all different colors of light. So almost like a diamond or something. Like they describe it as like extreme beauty at the core of the De Lima. And it's always kind of changing colors depending on how you hold it, the way it's reflecting the light, but just like an immense beauty. And so you see it and you're instantly drawn to want to hold it.
Kind of like a kid with your favorite marble, but like supersized, you know?
Yeah.
But then De Lima has to choose you. You have to almost be like a chosen one. And so oftentimes you don't find it, it'll find you. And when you do find it, you have to kind of perform this ritual. You have to cut your hand and you have to put your blood on the De Lima and grasp it. And then you will seal it. If you don't, it'll disappear. Like you can be holding it and put it in your pocket, try to grab it again, although they don't have pockets.
Right.
They got gourds.
Put it in their gourd.
They put it in their net bag. You put it in your net bag and it'll vanish. They'll try to get it and it'll be gone.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of seal it with your blood, and then you're the chosen one. It'll stay with you. And so it brings you favor.
The way
and
they
good luck.
describe it is almost like a secretive pet, because there's people in the lowlands who own them, and they're extremely valuable. And they rarely, if somebody does own one, they might not even tell you. If they do, they've hidden it away somewhere because they don't want to share it. And like Hudson said, if you don't cut your hand, then it's going to escape. It's like a pet that'll get away, like a dog that'll break free and escape. So you have to do the right thing to keep it. But
so
again,
this is the legend behind it. This is just what people have told us. But apparently one came to Mokondoma, and this is when we were in our teens, always run around in the jungle, love discovery. And we were working, the Wano church was working on an airstrip. And it was working on an airstrip so that it could get the gospel in further different lowland areas was the idea behind it. So kind of the whole tribe was kind of coming together to build an airstrip. And on a mountain, it's like extremely hard to find any area of flat ground. So this was actually our third house. after the Wano church was born, like 2,000 feet further down the mountain, the church decided to move up to the top because there's almost like a footprint of what could be an airstrip. Built our house up there, transitioned, and one of our good friends who was a believer, his name was Malam, he's digging into the side of the mountain, digging, and there's lots of quartz, and he heard like a clinking sound kind of like broken glass, almost like a marble hitting a marble, and like it was just weird. So he's like digging, and something fell out from like the hole like he was digging into. So he was looking around, and he saw by his feet this like beautiful stone, like it was round, just beautiful, and he was like, whoa, I just found a treasure. I don't know what this is, but this is cool. And again, the stories of De Lima is not super common up in the highlands. So he took it, and at the time he was working with some gloves with his like hose, crowbar. And so he just kind of slid it into his glove, looking around. Okay, no one's seen this. Okay, I'm going to hide this in my glove. And then he continued kind of working a couple more times with his shovel, with his hoe, as if, nothing happened. And then like, okay, I'm going to stretch. I need like a pee break. I'm going to go into the jungle. And so he like walks in to see what he's got. So he like takes off his glove, and from his testimony, it was gone. It had vanished. Like he had felt it. Like when he put it in his glove, he knew it was there. So he was like stink. Like somewhere along the way, it like slipped out. It fell, and so he tried to retrace his steps, and it was gone. And it kind of haunted him. Like, where did this treasure go? And so it was 2 days later that he kind of told some other people, like, man, I think I found De Lima. Like I thought it was just a rare stone. But like it was weird that it got on my glove. Like this isn't natural. I can't find it again. It was 2 days later. They were walking in the same area of where he kind of entered the jungle. They heard that same clinking sound, and like he stopped. Like he totally recognized the same sound, and it was moving away from him. And in the undergrowth along some rocks, there was like a small creek, and he was like, I think that's it. And so he starts running, trying to find this thing with his two buds, and didn't find it. But it started a catalyst of sightings.
Yeah, sightings.
And the De Lima, legend has it, it does not put off a glow unless it's dark out. It's only at light, during the daytime, it's just normal.
And so some of the villagers were basically like on patrol, like keeping their eyes out for this thing. And we had one of our best buddies one night was up on a knoll overlooking, this footprint of an airstrip and kind of the side of the mountain, which is all covered in these ferns. It's kind of like, high alpine, and they saw the glow, and it was low, moving through the ferns, slow, almost like an insect or something. Not a fast moving glow, but
putting off. He said like the radius was like 2 to 3 feet around this object, was emitting this like orb of light. So he's like, it's definitely not someone walking with a flashlight. It's very low to the ground.
But if you're one of those people out there that signed up for a bunch of stuff, what do you do when you need to cancel?
I mean, sometimes you don't even know you did or you don't remember. That's right. It's the third Bigfoot box that you got, and all of a sudden it starts showing up your front door, you're like, I didn't order all this fur and footprints. This is crazy. If you don't want to do that experientially, there's an amazing solution from Rocket Money. And Rocket Money is a personal finance app that pulls checking, savings, loans, investments into one dashboard, helps you find those subscriptions you didn't know you had, you're paying for, gives you budgets, financial goals, personalized insights, and you receive alerts for large transactions, etc. And it tracks all your subscriptions in one place and helps you cancel the unwanted ones easily. Also, Rocket Money is fantastic. Let me tell you, this is actually yesterday, Nate. I got an alert from Rocket Money that my internet bill, that a promo that had been put on there was coming off. And they said they were going to automatically reach out and renegotiate. And they did, and they saved me $205 over the next year by renegotiating my internet bill without me doing anything.
Evidence is clear. Your savings are disappearing right in front of your eyes if you don't sign up for Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/blurry. That's rocketmoney.com/blurry. rocketmoney.com/blurry.
And then our other best friend, I saw it very soon after, he was in the men's hut, and they were all singing worship songs till like 2 a.m. They love to like get together and just rock their guitars and stuff. And he was heading back to his house. It was 2 a.m. And then up in the same area up on the side of the hill where it's just like moss and ferns, beautiful ferns, he saw the glow. And so he's just like, I think that's the De Lima. Not an orb that's like off the ground, but again, almost as if it's just like rolling along
almost like a
the ground.
terrestrial creature, just kind of like slowly.
And so
moving
there's
around.
multiple sightings, and we were fascinated at the time. And so like we'd just quiz our friends, like, okay, tell me exactly what you saw. How far was the light? What was the color of the light? You know, can we go back to that site and see this? And we asked a lot of them, what is your initial thought? Did you sense fear? Did you sense oppression? Is this something evil? Or is it like a bug? Like, is it
is it
because
part
we
of the
have
natural
bugs
order of God's
that like
creation
glow and
somehow?
stuff. We have certain moths that will take in sunlight, and at nighttime it'll actually put off like a white glow.
Yeah.
It'll kind of light up the ground. So we're asking, is it like phosphorescent? Is it like a stone that just seems like with the moonlight, like it's putting off light? Like trying to quiz them to understand what this is. And they basically said, we don't know. We don't know if this is just one of God's creations that we haven't discovered. Like it could be. Like God's created lots of natural resources that are beautiful, lots of things in creation. Is it a type of like frog? We were asking them. They're like, no. They're like, it's definitely a rock, but it moves. And so we'd ask, how does it move? Does it have feet? And they're like, it just rolls. It rolls places.
Just rolls around.
So that kind of got us started. And I would go out and sit on our knoll for like hours at nighttime.
Like I'm going to be the one to see it next.
I'm going to find it and I'm
find
going
the
to grab
dilemma.
this thing. Not for power or anything, but I was so curious. I was like, this could be something in the natural order that mankind just have never discovered. And I don't know what it is. Or is it some bug that lays its egg and like it's dormant for years, and once you uncover it, like it's like a glowing insect or something. We had all kinds of crazy ideas.
But the lowland stories of the De Lima are far more blurry because it gets even weirder because they're more common down there, and people actually own them. Like I said, almost like blurry pets.
Like an orb. That's
So,
like
when we were
orb.
in the 80s, we used to have a thing called My Pet Rock. I mean,
there you go.
Yeah, that's
remember that?
Yeah.
So our
Anyway.
good friend, his name is Yeriton, the one who saw it up there on the mountainside. He went out on one of the outreaches to the lowlands. He was part of the literacy and the medical work down there, and he also was a teacher. He'd do like a Sunday school for the kids. Brought a lot of people to Christ. Just amazing work. But while he was down there, he met people that had a De Lima in their possessions, and to him, he was already intrigued because there was already this sighting. It was almost as if the De Lima appeared in Mokondoma, was moving around, but no one caught it yet. Yeah. It was kind of almost like it was searching for a master.
Yeah, I hadn't chosen
but there was
anybody.
no master to be found. That's kind of how they describe it, is that it chooses someone. It was almost like there was no candidates, and so it wandered. And so we were wondering, like, is that because they're all believers up there, and like there's no non-believer to find? We don't know. But down in the lowlands, there were people who had actually caught these things. And one of the guys, his name is Ndobi. I've heard his testimony firsthand. I've also heard it secondhand. Great guy, super solid believer now. But he talks about the first time that he encountered one. And he had just been to the garden, had a huge net bag full of sweet potatoes.
This was long before he was a Christian.
And he brought it down to the river, and he's washing his sweet potatoes. And something in his side vision spooked him, like it jumped at him. He thought it was a frog, like, oh, what was that? And it was this rock that actually, he describes it as traveling, rolling on top of the water, creating a wake, splashing, and then hitting the rocks next to him and clinking, almost as if someone had skipped a rock towards him. And so it kind of startled him, but he was looking at it and he was like, it was like nothing I'd ever seen. It was like this beautiful stone. Again, almost kind of ordinary on the outside, but immensely beautiful on the inside. So he's like, I realized this was in De Lima. So he knew the stories, and so he cut his wrist a little bit, put the blood on it, held it tight, took it all the way to his house, and he has 2 of them. And so our good friends who then came and brought the gospel, they've all seen it. A couple of the dudes are really good friends, have held it. One of our best friends has actually seen it glow at nighttime, but they don't know what to do with it. Like Ndobi, who's now actually a Bible teacher down there, he doesn't even think about it anymore. When I first heard, I was like, "You have one?" He's like, "Oh, I do have one." He hadn't thought about it in a while. He's like, "Yeah, I have them wrapped up in my house. Haven't gone out in a long time," but he still has them. And so I was asking him, I was like, "Is this something dark? Is it spiritual?" He's like, "I honestly don't know." He's like, "I don't feel anything evil by this thing, but
And they don't necessarily connect it to, again, the nefarious animism,
right? Which is very aware of like evil spirits,
right? Which they're aware of, and so that's what's made us really question is there a category of orbs, as it were, that are not necessarily nefarious, but also not completely, just physical.
But I'll give you guys one last fact about it, and then I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts, or if you've heard of other stories like this, and just hear your thoughts on what it could be. But the last interesting fact is that in the recent years, there's been different airstrips that have opened up in the lowlands. Air travel is now a little bit more common, especially in cases of medevacs where someone has to get out for being sick. And a lot of the lowlanders, not just the Wano, but other tribal groups that possess De Limas, they say that you cannot travel with it, that it emits something that tampers with technology. And again, the technology is new there,
right.
But
they're like, for some reason, like if you try to sneak it in your net bag and take it on a plane, like the plane won't be able to take off, like it won't start. And like the pilot like freaks out and is like, what's going on? And you're checking the plane. And then that person will realize it's the De Lima.
I think also around
like
devices,
take it out,
like
take it out, and then come back, and then the plane will start up and you can leave.
That's weird.
And so it's common knowledge that
you can't travel with
something
your
about the De Lima, it
you gotta
messes
find a dog
with
sitter for your De Lima
technology. So that's kind of the general information about it. There's different niche stories we could get into, but we've always been interested in
trying to get a picture of it.
Yeah, I actually told my friend, because phones are a little bit more prevalent now. I was like, next time you're on the phone with Ndobi, ask him to just send you a picture and send me the picture. Like, I'm super curious. And he's like, totally. Yeah. He'd love to do that because he has 2 of them.
Yeah.
So we'll eventually see it. And next time I'm in Indo, I'm going to try to make my way down to the lowlands and see it for myself. But Stone of Power, it's real. They wild. Wander. They emit glow.
But it doesn't like do anything for the owner, or they don't like. It's not like they consult it like it's some kind of.
No, they don't consult it, but it's supposed to bring some kind of
it's
luck.
Like a good luck charm. Like it brings you
success. It's supposed to
like a Faustian deal or something.
Yeah, it's supposed to help you in your life.
Well, some people have said that it brings you strength. It's actually like literally like a stone of strength, and as long as you're possessing it or holding it. Like individuals will have like an excess of strength. Like they'll just be super strong.
So it's supposed to enrich in your life is the idea.
I would say that like the first thought I have is like Christians would probably be like, oh, that's weird. That's impossible. But the high priest used to wear a vest with these stones in it that would glow. And
the 12 different stones.
Yeah. That's how God would communicate with. So I mean, I think a lot of these spirits kind of rip off the bigger, they're just it's a counterfeit kingdom.
Yes.
So why not do something that's kind of like that? Oh, I'm gonna But and then a lot of inanimate objects get demon possessed. People say like clocks and games and pictures.
Dolls.
And
that's
dolls.
a thought.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And it's really strange. And then a lot of people will see orbs floating through.
Right.
Their backyard or
maybe
up
think
to their window or inside their house.
Yeah. And when you're talking about seeing it made me think of like some of the things that are sort of unexplained phenomena here in the States, like the Brown Mountain Lights in North Carolina, where people see like mysterious glowing orbs that float above the woods at night. And there's places like the Marfa Lights in Texas where in the wilderness, like across the valley, kind of made me think of what you're saying. People will see lights that move through the forest, and there's not a good explanation that's been going on. And naturalists, scientists will say stuff like ball lightning, or there's got to be some sort of natural explanation, but they've yet to figure things out. It sounds but it's different in the sense that these people collect these. And what I think is really strange is that you collect it by blood, which feels ritualistic.
And you don't find it.
Bad.
That's the thing that's really strange, that it finds you. And that was the thing that always bothered us. And also the cutting, because that doesn't feel right.
Yes,
red flags are going off, and it's
that
hard
was
to tell
something.
Is there anything in the order of God's creation that's neutral? I guess, you know what I mean. That's not nefarious. That's also not like divine in a good sense, but just kind of like a strange.
And one of the things that we were trying to,
I don't know.
One of the things that we were trying to define was a lot of these stories come out of an animistic worldview. Were these things like the cutting imposed on this? Was that something that they thought would secure it? whereas you don't actually have to do that. Like we were trying to come up with ideas of what's something during that animistic worldview that they may be imposed or attributed to this stone, but maybe doesn't actually possess. Like maybe you don't actually have to cut your hand in order to keep it.
Yeah.
You know, Luke, a lot of times people spend more time watching a 3-hour documentary about subterranean cultures than they do even looking up a doctor. What do you think?
Sometimes it's something you just don't want to do, or you don't have time to do. You just go with what's there, and you make a phone call, and guess what? They can't get you in for 3 months. That doesn't help that you've got a festering rash you need looked at right now, Nate.
ZocDoc is here to help you, and you can get out of those rabbit holes, and you can find real people giving real testimonies of who's the good guy.
Yeah, and ZocDoc lets you search and compare local and in-network doctors. They've got more than 150,000 providers with 200-plus specialties across all 50 states. ZocDoc's website has tons of reviews from real patients and detailed doctor profiles, so you can choose the right one for whatever ails you, Nate. And also you can see actual appointments right on the site, so you can book right away, and most people get appointments within 24 to 72 hours. Sometimes you can even get a same day, and ZocDoc is free to use. This has been a big thing. We actually had the stomach flu run through our family last month and pulled up ZocDoc and found a doctor close to where I live.
And the same thing happened to me when I needed to find a dentist. Went to ZocDoc, got myself a local dentist. Great ratings. Thank you, ZocDoc, for sponsoring Blurry Creatures and this episode.
And listen, like your health matters, Nate. You should be taking care of yourself. All of us should be taking care of ourselves, right? And it shouldn't be complicated. Find and book the right doctor with ZocDoc. Head to ZocDoc.com/blurry to get started and check that appointment off your to-do list. That's ZocDoc.com/blurry.
So yeah, we're
Weird.
not totally sure, but it's one of those things where I literally know the guy. I know exactly where he lives. I know his house.
Yeah.
He has these two. Next time I'm over there, like I've always been so intrigued. I've just never had the opportunity to go see it for myself. But next time I'm over there, I'll have to get some pictures and I'll send it to you guys. I'll text you and say,
it's an ongoing
here's a picture
mystery,
of it.
an ongoing trying to figure
well,
out.
I mean,
We'll figure-
I remember
we'll
we did
figure
that
out one of these
episode
days.
on, the glowing vest is how God was communicating with his, kind of like the original encrypted text message.
Yeah.
The Umim and the Thummim.
Yeah. It was,
Which we don't still fully know what they were, right?
No, we don't.
There's no really
just
clear
sort of like
explanation.
it's in the biblical scriptures, but it's like
in the stones, the translation of the stones don't correlate to necessarily
right, and it doesn't give you much more than like this is what they did. They consulted them, and then at some point we did an episode, and at some point David didn't want the answers he was getting, so it just sort of went off into antiquity, and they stopped doing it.
well, and then someone sent us a message that L.A. Marzulli knew a guy that found one of them or something. And it still like glows. When the Holy Spirit is close to it, it'll glow.
Really?
Wow.
But
Interesting.
that's like that feels like kind of urban legend.
Yeah.
But I think Christians want to have like cool stories like that.
Yeah.
But that was a rumor that someone sent us. But
You never know.
Interesting.
or someone said on our show, my brain is toast at this point in the reverse. But
It's been one of those things that we're always fascinated by because there are those very real like dark things, and like this is spiritual, this is dark.
Yeah.
But then there's also some things that fall into the gray area. That's where I'm fascinated by it because I'm like, is this something that is like neutral, and is worth exploring and looking into?
yeah, I think
So
but
one of
all
these
God's
days-
creation is here to partner with. But I think when you give it dominance over you in some ritual or some way, I think we can all kind of corrupt creation.
Sure.
Or ourselves or things. It's funny how those go. But I mean, obviously, we've talked a lot about like remote parts of the world and stories of giants, and we've interviewed people from like military who were in remote parts of Afghanistan that seen them, and the most popular stories when the soldiers got one in a cave and shot at the giant of Kandahar.
Right.
But we interviewed a soldier who early in like when therms started becoming very popular, he caught one stand up and walk over the hill, and he's like, that was not. He thought it was just like 3 or 4 guys huddled around a fire. And then this thing all stood up in one mass and then
As tall as a tree.
Yeah, probably 14, 15 foot tall. So
And these are recent accounts.
yeah, this is like
We talked to Troy Brewer,
2007.
and Troy says he saw one on a mountain in Mexico.
Yeah.
That was like standing there watching. And so I know we had talked pre-roll about some of this.
You got some
but
giant stories.
there's some giant lore and stories in that part of the
We're
world.
always here for that.
Not surprisingly, there is. Yeah.
So I'm really new to Blurry.
Shame on you.
I'm ashamed to say that.
Thank
Why
you,
are
Morgan.
you
But-
even here?
Thank you,
I know,
Morgan.
I
Yeah.
know,
Get
right?
out.
You were born blurry. Now you're just catching up to the lingo.
Exactly. Yeah. But your guys' fascination in giants is actually what triggered sending you guys an email.
Yeah.
Because the whole talk of Nephilim and stuff is something that I wasn't super familiar with, like growing up. Like we had always chatted as brothers, but never really delved into it.
Yeah.
And so it's now looking back at our childhood and some of the legends in Wano and some of their stories of giants that I'm like starting to connect the dots.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, I think especially the last, again, 5 years being back in the States, this has been the longest period of time we've been like in America, like for consecutive, 5 years than our whole childhood. And so we've learned a lot about, again, like even like the First Nations people, the Native Americans. And I had no idea that, I mean, almost every major Native American tribe, had recountings of giant clans that they warred against. That was
the
like,
redheaded
new
giants that like
information.
burned in a
Crazy.
cave or something.
Yeah, Lovelock
Crazy,
Cave in
crazy.
Nevada. Yeah.
So like when
Crazy.
we started hearing that in our minds, all of a sudden we started connecting all these things because our friends also had a lot of lore about giants in the jungle. I mean, this is the far side of the world, right?
Yeah.
But the same themes. So
You say Lumbar Cave?
It's the Lovelock Cave.
Lovelock, thank you. The Lovelock Cave, I'm not up to date on my terms. That story, though, I saw something on YouTube, and that fascinated me because I totally correlated it with the legends of the Wano. So the Wano people, they have an origin story, and then they also have like a lot of legends and myths that are kind of woven into their worldview and their past. And they're just an oral culture. Nothing's ever written down. It's just stories passed on from generation to generation. And it's hard to get an idea of the history because their lifespan is so short. Mm-hmm. Like when we moved in there, the average lifespan was like 30 years.
Wow.
Like if you live to be 40, you're old. Like you're an old man. So their generations are small.
Yeah.
So trying to gauge like how far in the past their stories go is hard. But one of the really intriguing stories that we heard early on is how the Wano people, when they were first traveling through the jungle, and they first started approaching the land of Wano, there was an albino man that was accompanying them. And in some of the other tribal groups, there's like local Papuans that are albinos. And they're few, but they're out there.
Uncommon. It is a thing, but it's not. It wouldn't be normal. Like it would be very unusual. Very rare to see one.
But in Wano, there are no albinos. But legend has it that there was an albino way back in the day when they were all traveling together. And the details aren't clear about what happened with this individual, but the rest of the Wano felt threatened by him, and they killed him on the way. And he had a son and a wife, and they usually cremate their dead. And so after they killed this albino dude, they burned him. But his insides, his entrails, it did not burn. Like his flesh burned, but his organs didn't. And so that was weird. They're like, why can't this burn? And so they actually took it with them, continued hiking,
like maybe it's
camped,
just a spot.
tried again.
Yeah.
And they tried again. And over a period of like a week, they did not burn. And so they finally reached a place called Yei, which is on the border of the lowlands in Wano. And they just buried it. They're like, we're just going to get rid of this. This is so weird. And his son, this albino's son, was privy to all of this. And as he started growing into a young man, he surpassed all of them in height. And then as he reached manhood, he was extremely tall, and he was a giant. And the Wano marveled at his height. And when he had a wife and started procreating and having children, they were all giants. And so they talk about this as like a race of Wano. They call them the race of flying Wano.
Like a sub-clan within the Wano tribe who are all extremely tall.
So their name was derived by the fact that they didn't know if these were spirits or people because they traveled so quickly, almost as if they sprouted wings and flew like birds. Thus the name Flying Wano. And so they would almost like appear and disappear at will. And they started multiplying, and they were all huge. And the Wano people, like the big men of the tribe, gathered together and said, we have to take these guys out. Like they will overthrow us. This is how the legend goes. So I have asked questions like, were they malicious? Like, were they evil? Did they try to kill?
Why did you want to kill them?
The legend doesn't have any details regarding that, but apparently there was something ominous about these people that the Wano felt like we have to take them all out.
Even though they're part of the tribe, like they're
Yeah.
like part of the Wano people, but they felt threatened. Like, we can't coexist together and make this work.
So they gathered everyone together, all the giants, all their wives, all their offspring, and they threw a big feast for them. So lots of vegetables. They killed wild pigs, and they threw this big feast. And in their merriment, kind of gathered them all together. And one of the flying Wano said, "Oh wait, we don't have any salt." And salt was a big deal in Wano land because there was a giant historical three-way trade that connected different people groups. The Wano were known for their stone axes. They had a special stone in these rivers. The way the water flowed over them created a point, and that could be sharpened to a stone axe. And back then, there's no metallurgy in all of Papua, and so people literally cut trees down with stone axes. And so they were known for their stone axes. That was their resource. And they would trade with a different people group who had access to salt water. And they would take these different reeds, soak them in salt water. The reed would absorb it,
dehydrate it,
and then they would cook it. And when it turned to ash, it's like a very salty ash, and that was traded. And there was also a people group that had coastal access, and they had
cowrie shells.
These cowrie shells.
Yeah, cowrie shells was like the favorite form of currency. So away from the coast, these cowrie shells would be transferred away from the coast into the highlands. They would trade the shells for salt. Salt would be traded for stone axes, and the three-way triangle of trade. That's how everybody would get their salt. So they had no seasoning for their food.
So if you ran out of salt, it wasn't easily accessible. And legend has it, one of the giants was like, "Oh, we need salt for our food," and he went right as they were they cook in these giant earthen pits, almost like a giant crock pot.
Yeah.
Underground.
And it takes about 3 hours for all the meat, all the vegetables to cook. And so it was right as they were about to cover up the pit, he was like, "I'm going to go get some salt." And then legend has it, he came right as they were opening up the pit, which is a 3-hour period. And people were marveled. He must have flown because there's no way he could travel that distance and get salt and come back in time.
Yeah.
So they gathered them all these giants and their wives and their kids in this one hut. And then they shut the doors and they lit on fire and they just burned it to the ground. And they were screaming and dying. And a few of the men and children and a couple of women were able to break through some of the siding of the house and flee into the jungle. And they kind of went to the north and the east and the west. And they all died of their wounds out in the jungle. And supposedly, the distance that the legend has it, these extreme distances. So where they were at in a location called Yei, all the way up to Misty Mountain, that location that we talked about.
It's a week hike away.
Just
they were
way
able
up
to, in their strength, run and survive and get to these places, but then
die of these mortal wounds, these burns.
And so now you have these, and so cremation is a thing in Wano. And so historically, they've always burned people. So you never have bones. But some of these individuals who
they do a mixture of both.
Yeah,
they burn and they also put on racks up in trees, just depending on
the situation,
status and situation.
But for these flying Wano, most of them were all burned and completely destroyed in the fire of the house. But for these that actually escaped, they died on the trail, and some of those bones were preserved. Those skeletons were found later.
So for two individuals, these two giants, they died over in a location called Toan. And that's where our best friend, who is Wano, his mom intermarried with another tribal group leader. And so he's kind of a mix of the Dem tribe and the Wano tribe. But his father's grandfather, so it'd be his great-grandfather, when he was just a very young man, was kind of with a group that found these bones up on this rack. Their ancestors had found the bones, put them in a rack up in a tree, and they felt it upon themselves to preserve these bones. So they took them and transferred them into a cave, and ever since that time, kind of became stewards of these bones. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of our best friend Yeriton, his lineage. So we've heard these stories and heard that the bones were there, but have never traveled ourselves to see them. It's very far away, but our friend has. And growing up together, we did everything. We collected new insects to science and tracked down cryptids and the canines and all the adventures we always had together. And so he was just as enthusiastic about history and archaeology and all these things.
I think we sparked a lot in him because we were always excited. So he would get excited.
And so, but it's a long ways away back to kind of his birthplace, that village. But there was a death in the family. He and his mom traveled, a couple of days hike away to the spot. And then from there, it's a day hike to go to see this cave. And so he went and saw it. When he came back, he was like, "Boys, I went to the cave and I saw the bones."
There. Yeah.
And he was like, "They're giant bones." You know, they're much larger than our own. And he described it as the best way to tell was from like the finger bones. Mm-hmm. It was like such an easy comparison. Yeah. He's like the thigh bones, like you try to put it up and it's like very large. Almost like he described it as like a cassowary thigh bone, but larger. And so cassowary are like large emu, like
tall birds, long legs,
and they're coveted as like a meat source, but also for their bones. You know, before metal, the Wano would carve these bones into giant daggers, and that's what they would use for close hand-to-hand combat. And it's because the thigh bones are so long and so sturdy. But he was like the finger bones you can actually put up to your own hand and kind of gauge how big these giants were. So that's like the legend. And so we've always wanted to go see these giant bones, and we just always assumed, again, never having seen a visual of our own, there's just some tall guys, because Wano are short. They're typically like a tall Wano would be like 5 foot. You know, they're short people. So even us, like, you know, 6 foot, and you're considered really tall in Wano land. So we're like, oh, it's probably just a couple guys that had the genes to be a little extra tall. Yeah. But it's only in the recent years where we've actually connected the story of almost something supernatural about the lineage of these giants, that they were Wano, stemming but from the also albino the Wano beyond, saw them as like a race of their own. And when they reproduced, their offspring were giants. And the Wano themselves weren't sure if they were even people. Like they were so fearful.
They questioned their
they
status.
thought
They're
these
like,
guys are
almost
non-Wano. They're could be spirits, and therefore we need to kill them. And so it's only been in the recent years that we kind of connected some dots and are wondering, like,
largely after, again, hearing about the Native Americans in North America and like their experiences of, again, just like Lovelock Cave, like feeling so threatened by this sub race of, you know, tall Indians that we have to exterminate them.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to burn them out of a cave. We're going to burn them in a house, have a big feast, and
it's like the Red Wedding. It's like the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. Just to get everybody there to eat, and then you kill them all.
Yeah. Well, even this idea of like the more stories I've heard about, like the red-headed giants and that they're pale-skinned, even correlating that of like the father of this race was white.
And even the albino connection, that's the closest. That's the closest thing that we could understand, because they've seen a few albinos, and that was kind of like their reference point, like kind of like that. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's an albino. It's just light skin, and none of them are. So it's very different, you know, very unusual. But that correlates to, like, just again, the paleness of the giants.
People. Yeah. So this obviously doesn't go back too far. Like the fact that the bones are still in place. He said a lot of the bones have deteriorated. So they are very old.
He said there's part of the rib cage, part of some digits from a hand, and like a thigh bone or two that are still preserved.
A lot of the other ones have kind of either been lost, taken, or just eroded.
Yeah.
But this isn't too far back in time. So I was super curious beforehand coming on to just ask you guys. You guys have heard a lot of stories, are a lot more into this type of stuff. What are your thoughts on, like, could there still be modern day, like, giants or Nephilim or descendants of Nephilim? Like, how does that work? And could this be something like that? Or I'm not totally sure how to wrap my mind around all of it.
We were talking pre-roll, like one of the things that the more modern stories other than Afghanistan, which are obviously there's a Kandahar giant, and then we've talked to some operators out there that have seen them in therms, that kind of thing. There's a ton of legend or lore out of the Solomon Islands, which is near to Australia, near to South, where you guys were in Southeast Asia. And they say that even now that villagers there are giants there that come and take people. And that's a very modern take, more modern than, we're talking like this century, as opposed to like some things we hear about Native Americans.
Yeah, they're cannibals.
So. Almost like legends of like the Cyclops or something coming out of caves and like.
Well, the caves, and you know that's it. Just kind of is what it is for the story. Yeah, it's kind of it is all connected.
The same themes.
Yeah, I wonder if like a lot of the, like, I think cannibalism definitely stems from the giants. That's what they did, and they taught it to people. People started. I don't think that was built into like something we learned.
Well, in cannibalism, like we were talking about the previous episode, that was prevalent until the 60s. Again, like we've met a cannibal. Like it's been very, up till just recently that's been stopped. And that was largely because of the influence of Christianity of the first missionaries. Yeah. But when and then the Indonesian government started like getting on board and like banning that practice outright. but all the tribes were cannibals.
Yeah.
And it was all about,
still some to this day.
Soul substance and control and gaining the strength of your enemies, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, where does that come from? Where does that stem from?
Exactly. Where does it, someone taught this dark religion to people around the world. I mean, we've heard stories of there's giant museums in Nevada, Lovelock. Obviously, there was one in Catalina Island where they had these bones. They dug them up. It seems like the giants were relegated to like certain parts of the world. Like they when they started to like lose territory, they would go to islands or different places. So they kind of hide out and breed slowly, and then they would. I think humans hunted them. I think they didn't have dominion here, so they were a cursed race, and so to speak. So eventually, humans were going to overtake and take back the territory. But swamps of Louisiana, mountains of Afghanistan, islands of Solomon, different, even just, but digging them up here all over America, digging them up in remote parts of the world, and so. It's not far-fetched at this point in our...
Yeah, and the phenomenon is interesting because almost every culture, like to a man, if you will, has giant lore and giant legends and giant history of giants in their, in their oral tradition or in their written tradition, whether it be like there's artwork from the Aztecs and the Mayans about killing the last giants of South America. And we've kind of postulated about how that would happen. And we know that in the Bible, there's the conquest of Joshua is to rid the Holy Land of these people groups. And
the Anakim, the Rephaim.
All the ites, the Zuzuites and all these different things, they all were giant clans. And so there's a lot of hypotheses that maybe as they're clearing the Holy Land of these abominations, that some of them left and had to leave. And so they got on ships with the Phoenicians, et cetera. And they sort of, there's diaspora of the giants as they try to survive from being hunted. And they ended up in sort of the remote places of the world. And
yeah, but it's hard.
That's interesting.
Like there's legends. And then every once in a while we'll get like a photo or something of people like finding footprints in stone and things. And it's always cool because you get something like this. This is a Bigfoot track, but that's like from the Patterson-Gimlin film.
Wow, that's epic.
Area from the Willow Creek.
Wow. The giant footprints in stone, which we've posted on our channels over the years, look
like the fossilized ones.
Yeah, so it looks like a foot, but it's just massive. It doesn't look like a Bigfoot track.
So another really interesting connection that we made just recently. Part of our years of adventuring in Indonesia, most of them were maintained to the highlands, but we also had a lot of coastal connections. And Indonesia, by definition, it's the largest archipelago in the world. So it's a country of islands, thousands of language groups. And in some of these islands, there's, the conventional theorists would postulate that there's all sorts of artwork, rock artwork that they would say is prehistoric. It's they don't even know how to categorize it. Basically, it's like it's it's caveman art. That's how they would dismiss it. But what's interesting about this art in the islands and these incredible, mushroom, craggy outcroppings and high up on these cliff sides, you find incredible artwork. And we did one of the most comprehensive kind of like documentations of this art in a specific part of Indonesia and have
an epic series that's coming out soon.
Well,
Tomb of the Ancients
on Angel Studios.
Let's go.
Yeah,
but this artwork that was documented displayed a wide range of very creative things. But among them, and this is what's really interesting, are handprints. So just like the handprints that you see in the caves in France,
Yeah.
And there's some in Indonesia. There's some all around the world, obviously in South America. But these handprints, used with the red dye that are marked on very high points of these, again, craggy limestone pinnacles and islands that you look at it and you go, I don't even know how you'd get up there. You'd have to make an elaborate set of, of stairs or ladders or something, scaffolding. Yeah. But on top of that,
it's almost like spray painted. It's almost like someone put a hand and then like spray painted. So when they remove their hand, there's like,
it's red all around when you see the hand.
This
is what fascinates anthropologists, though. It just so happens that a majority of these hands are twice as big as our own hands.
Huh.
And so when the secularists look at it, they basically say, these are actually not real hands. These are actually, people would make cutouts of human hands and then make these symbols. Why do you do that? Why would you have giant hands
Or it could never be a large human
six
hand.
fingers on
so
them?
5 fingers. 5 fingers.
Sometimes
But you have
missing
these-
digits.
Yeah.
But you have
Spirit babies.
large hands. And the question is, well, I mean, what is this? Obviously, but
Yeah.
also, why are they large? Same with footprints, handprints and footprints up on these impossibly high
Huge.
places. And you're going, what is this? And it's like, does that also have a connection?
It reminds
Because
me of House of David. Have you seen the House of David?
Yeah,
series?
that's right.
Where it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
giant
that's it. That's
handprints?
literally,
Seriously,
that's
that's
what
what
it's
it's
that's
like.
the
Yeah.
so the rumor is that most of them had 6 fingers. So they would have
right.
polydactyly, I think. Don't
Yeah, or
quote me on
six
that.
toes,
Yeah.
6 fingers.
Digits.
We should actually look back and see if we can't
Maybe we can find
find
one with six
one
But
of
the
one of
natives, that was
six.
a big part of the theory, is that's when they would show their hand to other natives that they wouldn't have the 6 hand
That
fingers.
it's a human.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, hey, look,
I'm good.
I'm not
I'm one of you.
I'm not a hybrid.
Weird.
Don't kill
Another-
me.
Another fascinating thing that we came upon in our years of living in the jungle. A good friend of ours so metallurgy had never
Yeah.
been developed in Papua, like as far as we know.
Which
You
is
know, as
why
far
they're one
back-
of the hardest cultures to find anything, because all their material culture, their villages, everything, it all just decomposes and is
Into
gone.
the jungle.
Yeah.
And they cremate largely, so they don't have burial grounds. So a lot of the culture of the Papuans is
They don't even
totally
use-
absent. You can't find it.
They don't even use
archaeologically.
stones to build or
'Cause
erect
they're-
any structure.
Yeah.
Because they're
It's-
migratory. They're nomadic.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
nomadic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they leave nothing behind.
So literally the only artifacts ever found in Papua are art. It's like cave art and drawings. That's it. So that said, there was one of our good friends was creating a new garden site, and he was tilling, and he was in a particularly like kind of rocky spot, and so he was digging, and he said he was about like a meter in the ground, so about like 3 feet digging, and he hit something that was like super hard in the clay, pulled it out, and it is this giant iron shaft, man-made iron shaft, and it has 2 little fins on it, so it's like symmetric.
There's symmetry. Yeah.
And,
it was
um,
handcrafted by
and it's
obviously a
about
person.
this long, and he had no idea what it was. He was just like, "This is so random. Like, I'm out here in the middle of the jungle. I just found something that's like man-made," and so he knew that we were always interested in things, and so he brought it to me, and he was like, "Hudson, like I found something super cool. I want you to look at this. I have no idea what this is." And he pulled it out of his like net bag, and it's this iron shaft of some type. I was like, "Oh, like that's cool. Where'd you find it?" He was like, "I found this like 3 feet in the dirt in my garden in the jungle. Where did it come from?" I was like,
So
"Well, I have no clue."
At first you're like, well, I mean, when we're looking at it, the thing about it is it's about, this long. One of the ends looks like it's been broken off of something else. And when we first saw it, we almost thought like, this clearly didn't come from an aircraft, because World War II, there's a ton of World War II aircraft. Like that's totally a thing.
Like wreckage and stuff.
Does it look like the end of a spear?
It looks almost like it could be a giant farming tool, or we thought like, did this come off like an old ship, like some kind of a mechanical
The Portuguese way back in the day.
Portuguese ship, like, because it's so crude. It's like the metallurgy is so crude to where it's like you can just see how it's just all been beat out. Like it's just so
I've
rough.
always wanted to have it tested to see
We're
like
is it a
if
weapon?
they can
Is it
tell.
a farming
given
tool?
the
We've
age.
scanned the internet, and maybe there's some internet sleuth who could actually see that and know like whether it's medieval or
Or
older,
ancient.
and try to find
Yeah.
like, is this a weapon? Is this part of a tool? But we've scanned and spent a ton of time. We cannot figure out what the heck this thing is.
But the thing is, it's
bizarre.
it's like the central highlands of Papua, Indonesia. So some of the most impenetrable territory. So even way back in the day when like the Portuguese were coming through, it's like the Spice Islands and doing trade, stuff never reached central Papua. I mean, barely reached
I mean,
like the coastal
It would have
areas.
been traded and traded and
But
traded.
like,
and
let
traded.
alone to reach the highlands, like it would almost have to be passed down generationally to reach that distance. Like you'd almost have to like hike, meet new people groups, pass it on, die. They would then like to get to where it was and then to be as deep as it was. Like we just don't have any kind of explanation.
I mean, metal is foreign
But-
to them. You know, they don't have that in their culture that they would be able to extract
Learning
that and
more
develop
about
it.
ancient cultures and how there was times where giants or people of knowledge and wisdom like came and were introduced and said, "Hey, we're going to bring you this knowledge or information," oftentimes had technology that surpassed that people group. And so this idea of learning a little bit more about like the Wano's past and their history, and this idea that there was a race of giants and there was almost like an individual that introduced that race who seemed to be from the outside or something. Could they have also brought tools, you know, or we just don't know.
That's
it's such a
interesting.
question mark. It's just like we've never been able to label it as anything. It's just like big mystery. We don't know. But I'll have to send you guys a picture.
Yeah.
We've tried to have some archaeologists look at it. We've had a couple guys who were like history buffs, totally secular, but just like say, hey, do you know what this is? And they're like,
I have no explanation.
We'd have to like take a sample.
Well, they're definitely interested in metals and going around the world finding them and mining. And this whole concept, they say, like in the Book of Enoch, that's one of the things they taught humanity, right? So if they had angelic parents or some sort of offshoot of a couple generations, then how much of that was, part of their instinct in some ways? They knew these things. I don't know. I don't know how their DNA works completely, but definitely they were intelligent and they were building and doing things far beyond like humans are confused what's going on. But lots of weird stories on islands and giants and remote parts of the world. And
it's just interesting to see the similarities, like the talk of giants way out in the jungle and then coming here to the States and learning that Native Americans have giant tails too. And it's just like opposite ends of the globe, but commonalities in worldview and commonalities in history and
mythology.
Yeah. How does it all tie together?
Well, so speaking of virgin jungle and being way out in the middle of nowhere, one of the things we had talked about before we got on the show, which I wanted to bring up and have you guys talk about a bit, was the idea of dinosaurs, perhaps. Is you get out in the middle of nowhere, and this is not just like, because I know I want to let you guys talk about this a bit, but these are things that have kind of been hushed and talked about, whether it be like the Congo jungles, places that are impenetrable, not only sometimes have giant stuff, but like as far as giants, but also people will talk about
giant lizards,
like, in the 80s, was it the
Nephilim lizards?
The 90s, the terrible thunder
Joe
lizards?
Taylor, he had a creation museum in Texas. He came on our show early. Joe Taylor?
A little bit.
So he passed on, but he said that people would come into his creation museum and from places like this and tell him. Someone said that they saw like a raptor kind of creature come out. Or it was maybe it's like a T-Rex kind of creature, like not as big, but came out of the bushes, ate one of their goats or something, and then went back in the bush. And I don't know where this was, but it's not uncommon, is what I'm saying. We kind of heard it on our show a few times.
Yeah. So to give a premise for large reptiles, because that's been a dream of ours, is to find a giant reptile. So in Indonesia, there's a lot of different species of reptiles. Reptiles never stop growing. Literally had a dude whose uncle got eaten by a giant snake. Like, just went to the garden.
Like an anaconda? Like
giant, constrictors.
Jeez. Yeah. How big would we say giant? For context, to listeners and me.
Big. Big
enough to eat a person.
Big enough to eat a person.
Have you seen that black and white photo from the plane from the 60s? Of
Yes. My younger brother Asher, he loves that picture. That was his lock screen for a while. Yeah. But the dude didn't come back from the garden. And he had a place where he loved to take a nap under a shaded tree. And so man, I bet he's just sleeping. They went to go see, and there's a giant snake crawled up right there where he usually naps. And his machete was stabbed into the dirt, just outside of arm's reach. So, it just ate a whole human. And so it's super lazy. So they took that same machete and just started whacking its head off, cut it open. And sure enough, the dude's uncle, came out.
Jeez.
And so you can find current videos on YouTube from Indonesia, different parts
Southeast
of Indonesia.
Asia, if you look, it's
literally cutting snakes open and people falling out.
Nice.
This was a dude in a town, and so he actually pulled up his phone and showed me the video. He's like, "This is my uncle." I was like, "Whoa, that's..." So there are large reptiles in Indonesia. They never stop growing as long as they have a safe environment and a consistent food source. Reptiles are also animals that don't have to eat super regularly. They can survive off of, a month at a time between meals. So the idea of having huge, vast stretches of jungle, plentiful food source, it's kind of just in tropics, it's the right mixture, the right environment to have big reptiles out there.
And they also have, they have large crocodiles. That's
huge crocodiles.
Small example of a dinosaur as well.
The first time we ever interacted with something that we thought seemed dinosaur-like, I was sitting out on a knoll, and it was sunset time, and I had my favorite slingshot. I was going to go out and do some hunting, and something kind of caught my eye flying, and I turned over, and there was this probably 3 foot, it was 3 foot long flying red creature. And it reminded me of a pterodactyl in the moment. It's kind of like the first thing that I thought of. It almost looked like a bat. It definitely wasn't a bird. It didn't have feathers. It had skin wings. And it flew up on this branch right on the edge of this cliff. It was a pretty sketch cliff. It's actually a cliff that a lot of people would use a restroom on. They make little porta potties with trees out over the ledge because you go and, you know, it's way down there.
Yeah.
And so it landed on this like tree, and its head was kind of covered by leaves. I couldn't see it, but I could see his body. And it was sitting upright, which we have a lot of different species of fruit bats, very large bats. But bats do not have the bone structure to support themselves upright. They can only land upside down. And so I knew right away it isn't a bat. And it had such a bony spine and just hunched over that it was almost as if its head, whatever its head was like down low, kind of almost on its chest. Because its shoulders and its wings were almost kind of arched upwards.
Sharp shoulder blades, yeah.
And I could clearly see there's no feathers. It was just like this kind of bright red skin. And the kind of like almost setting sun was shining on it and caught one of its wings, and it was almost like translucent. Like the skin was so thin that you could like see light through it. And it stood there, and then it kind of hopped to one side. Really weird movement. And then like hopped to another side, you know? And then kind of was like, it could tell like its head was peering. It's like looking at something or seeing where it's going to go. And then it literally hopped off and just took off.
Wow.
So I was so stunned.
I didn't know what to say. He came back to the house and he like literally had this whole rant about it. And so we all went off looking for it. He
Just
was like
tearing off into the jungle.
I don't know what I just saw. This thing was crazy. We got to go find it. It wasn't a flying fox. And so we all went out the door and we spent until like it got dark looking for it. And
I was so fanatic about it. I was like,
also you'll notice most of the personal
saw like a dinosaur. Like I have to go find this thing.
Happened with this guy because he spent so much of his childhood literally like isolated.
How old were you?
Like with his slingshot. So
I was like I don't know, probably 12 or 13 at the time.
Because you guys have seen most everything in the jungle, so you're not going to like have a misidentification of a bird or
Well, the first time I heard about pterodactyl sightings was in Papua New Guinea.
Yes, that's the thing.
And they were like bioluminescent.
Yes.
They're glowing when they're flying and they're terrorizing people.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's crazy. Yeah, like on our side of the island, we don't have pterodactyl like reports. That is definitely on like the PNG side.
Yeah.
But I will say like even like its movement, the way its flight pattern was nothing like I've ever seen before. Like again, we have the giant flying foxes, the fruit bats that are huge, you know. And I literally, one of my like high school studies was to identify every bird in Mokondoma. I loved birds, and so I knew every bird, its call, its flight pattern. Just by hearing the wing beats, I could identify a bird. And this thing was something so different. The way it flapped and its body movements, it was like, that is weird. Like I gotta find that thing. I gotta see what that is.
So this is like not a bird with feathers. It's like you said. Basically, you're describing like
more bat-like.
More bat-like.
Yeah.
Like the skin you can see through on certain creatures if you put light behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very much like a bat wing, but this was in broad daylight.
Dang.
So that was like one of my first encounters with something that I thought,
how big?
Like
again?
I might have just seen a dinosaur.
Like how many feet? Like 4 feet?
It's probably like the width, you know, my arm length. So
how
it was
tall?
that like 6 feet-ish, you know, wingspan. Like it wasn't huge. It was probably about like 2 feet tall.
Yeah.
You know, so like a semi-large creature. It wasn't massive.
Yeah.
But it was definitely something that like every day after that I went to the jungle, like for years, like kept my eye out. Like I gotta see this thing again. So that was an interesting encounter.
You didn't see the head or this, like what?
What? Yeah.
Like
it flew just enough within the first layer of trees, you know, where I caught really good glimpses of like flying and its flight pattern. Then when it perched, again, it perched in such a way that like its body was visible on the main tree, but its head, there was like a branch with a whole bunch of thick leaves, and it was just enough. I kind of
undiscovered species.
What color?
For sure, undiscovered species. And it's just bright red. That's what was so shocking. Was just like, what is this creature?
Like a hairless cardinal, a 4-foot hairless cardinal up there.
Exactly, something like that. Something like that.
That's crazy.
But as far as dinos, do we want to divulge our deepest, darkest?
Yeah, you do.
Secrets on Blurry.
Well, part of them are, I believe, in Dad's book, right? I think he touches under a little bit.
I think barely.
So we'll just go for it. So we're not going to disclose locations and specific names just because it is such an interesting case study. But
his case file Delta Tango.
Right.
That's our code name for it.
So my dad had the privilege of, before we actually went into work full-time among the Wano people, he surveyed large swaths of Papua and the islands surrounding it, because we were basically there to work like career long-term with a unengaged, unreached people group. And so he had the privilege of seeing a lot of different parts of the island, meeting a lot of groups of people. And my dad, before he went into career missions, he was a wannabe marine biologist. That's what he was. He was fascinated by jellyfish. That was his thing. Like, he was like a jellyfish nerd. And again, God called him to missions. And he left all that. But then it just so happened that he got to live in this amazing jungle and make discoveries. So like, God's so good. Like, when you sometimes like don't follow your dreams, follow him, and then he'll full circle like reward you for that. Yeah. So my dad became, instead of a marine biologist, more of just like a biologist. He was just like interested in everything. But during a lot of the early days of him surveying, before we were living among the Wano, he would be basically dropped off, in a helicopter. Sometimes he would go up rivers and canoes with guides, or sometimes kind of by himself with a teammate, and basically, walk into villages and try to get stats on the area, the language, where they're at, their needs, just kind of assessing these different groups, open doors. And one particular group of people that he surveyed through.
A really intense location. It's kind of known as the Dark Triangle is the area that's called. Yeah. Thus Delta Tango.
Yeah.
So deep in the heart of the Dark Triangle.
Yeah,
very difficult area to access.
Yeah. And every time he would travel into one of these areas as just a lover of nature, he was always asking the local people like, hey, so, like, what's your favorite food? And also like, what are the top animals around here? And what, any interesting creatures? Like, he was always asking those questions. And usually the answers will always be the same. Oh yeah, crocodiles, this kind of bird, this kind of, marsupial, the same things.
A lot of monitor lizards.
Yeah. A lot of monitor lizards. But this one place he went into, he asked that question. The locals came back with, oh yeah, we have, all the things, wild pigs, all the normal things. But then they said, and we have this one creature called the Beludok, and he's really special. And my dad was like, well, what is it? And they're like, well, it's, how do we describe it? And they basically said it's like a large lizard. And that really piqued my dad's curiosity, because he's interested in that kind of stuff. And so he asked, well, describe me, what is this lizard like?
Like how long?
Like how big is this lizard? Because there's a lot of different kinds of monitor lizards. Like
monitor lizards they're scary. I'm not sure if you've ever seen one in person. Yeah. They're scary. The crocodile monitor especially, it's the longest lizard in the world. And it'll literally ambush you. And so it sits up in the trees and it just drops on you and eats you. Really terrifying. They
longer than the Komodo
blood
dragon,
around their teeth and their gums. It'll drip down as a way to intimidate prey. Like, really scary lizards.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Dad asked, how long is this? And so they marked it off in the sand. So Dad kind of paced it, and it was around 7 meters, around 21 feet long.
Jeez.
So Dad was like,
so the crocodile monitors, how long do they get?
Around the same.
Similar
in length.
But this is what was interesting. So he was going, okay, so they have crocodile monitors. But he asked more questions, and they continued. And they said, it's really long. It's super ferocious. We see its footprints in the jungle. We're scared of them. It eats, couscous, different kinds of marsupials, different kinds of birds. We don't mess around with them. And they said, this is what was interesting. They said, its belly is about the size of a large fuel drum. So the kind of fuel drums that an airplane would hook up to and take the fuel from.
It was 500 liter.
Yeah, which is huge, huge. Yeah. And that's what really caught my dad's attention, because crocodile monitors are notoriously skinny. They're they're the longest lizard in the world, but they're also super
very
skinny.
Slender.
So the Komodo dragon far outweighs it, just by weight and size and in power. But this thing had a massive belly. It was big bodied, and they said, unlike a lot of normal reptiles, this thing actually would stand up on its two hind feet when it was intimidated, or if it was trying to
perch up. It's typically down low.
Yeah.
But if it gets startled or intimidated, it'll arch up way high in its front legs, and its neck is very long, and so it's big and intimidating.
Yeah, and he said, it's bad news, and we see them occasionally. We'll see their tracks, but we try not to get involved, and we don't hunt them. Basically, they're the top of the food chain. And, you don't mess around with them.
They told her dad, when they're on hunting trips and they find its footprints and they're fresh, they'll go a different way. It's not even worth coming in contact, and that these giant lizards lived in caves, and they like knew the specific caves of where these things dwelled. And they just would never go there. You know,
they had a specific word for it. And they're like, yeah, and this is one of the creatures. And so my dad, you know, he wrote all about that and he found that fascinating. Of course, he was kind of transient just going through. And so he never had time to really like follow up on that. And since then, we've never been back in that area. Like Hudson said, it's a very remote part of the world. And growing up, Dad always used to tell us that story. And we were always just fascinated by it. Dad, tell us about the Beludok. Tell us about the Beludok. And so he would always tell us that story. And we've never been able to go back to that area. But several years later, this was actually not too long ago, we found a book called
don't drop the name. We got to keep some of these secrets.
So we found a book about a person that had actually grown up in that part of Papua who became a Christian. It's a long story. It's almost like his autobiography about a bunch of random things, his memoirs. Yeah. But in the early days of that book, and this was translated. So he doesn't speak English, but he partnered with the guy who translated his story into English. And I won't reference the book, but in the early chapters,
on Amazon. If you guys are interested, just drop a comment. Maybe we'll divulge it.
So in this video, in the early chapters of the book, though, the man's describing his upbringing and his childhood, and he talks about how his mom, you know, would go down to the garden to work, or would go down to the river to like wash sweet potatoes, and how during that time while her back was turned, you know, and when he was a baby, she would hang him up high in the trees so that the Komodo dragon want to eat him. And this is just like, you know, he's just talking about his life, his early years. Yeah. And my dad found this book and he was reading it and he was going, well, that's really weird, you know, because the island of Papua has no Komodo dragons. Komodo dragons are only limited to Komodo Island. Yeah. And so why would the translator choose to use that word when that's not a creature that exists? You know, that's what he used because he's trying to describe just like the testimony of those guys who lived there. Like he had encountered this very large, big body lizard. And so they chose to use the word Komodo dragon.
Like the Western translator just, as this big lizard was described, he's just like, oh, it sounds like a Komodo dragon.
So that was an interesting cookie crumb and a clue. And we really kind of, you know, took that as like, okay, this is interesting. This is kind of another independent source of a person who grew up in that area, who has, you know, a background and this knowledge of a very large lizard that, again, this Western translator chose to use, you know, Komodo dragon to describe, which probably wouldn't be the, you know, the most accurate word.
But then the third piece of evidence that we found, and this is years later, back in like 2018, we were living in a different region in the coastal area, and we ran into used to be a heli and bush plane pilot. And he and his wife were heading back to the States, missionary aviation, like bush pilot. He'd love to serve missionaries. So we knew of him, but he had never like serviced us directly, but we knew of his family. So they had been serving since, I don't know.
He was like an old retired pilot.
I want to say back in the 70s, you know, had served 30 years in Papua. They were heading back to the States, and very kind of quiet guy, but we were just over dinner, just kind of chatting and discussing. And somehow we got on the topic of like big lizards. And he told this story and so we told him a little bit about the Beludok, and he referenced, oh yeah, like I've been in that area before back when I was flying a helicopter. He's like, I remember one time very specifically, I was bringing in two guys to do some survey work. It was, you know, far away from any people. It was just like this little like grassy area, like just kind of like a pocket in the trees. I was able to land. And he was like, we brought the helicopter in and landed. And he was like, as soon as we landed, he was like, this extremely large lizard came running out of the tree line at us and just stood on the edge. So he was like, his full body wasn't exposed, but it was like his full front torso was. And he stood up really tall on his front legs with like his head way arched up and was just like trying to intimidate us.
And just like literally on the edge of the you know,
the forest.
He said we were terrified.
The rotor wash of the helicopter. Oh, wow. Like when the rotor wash, you know, helicopter lands, everything takes off. Right. You know, any animal, any bird, it's like they're terrified.
But this thing actually
came up and approached it right on the edge of the rotor wash, is like puffing up its chest, getting all big.
And he actually had like a film camera, like just a small one, and he took a picture of it. Took a picture of this thing, and the two guys that were with him were terrified, and they would not leave. They were like, we're staying in this helicopter until either you take us away or this thing leaves. Yeah. And so the pilot gave it like 5 minutes, and eventually it lost interest and went back into the jungle. The two guys got out. Later he came back to pick them up. They were okay. But we were like, oh my goodness, we just met an eyewitness who saw the Beludok. And so we were fascinated by that. He's also had some really interesting stories about some lakes actually really near Wano land, because where he serviced was a small town too far to hike, but somewhat close to Wano land. And it's like really mountainous. And so you get these kind of subalpine lakes, like almost like ponds, that are either being fed by like a spring or rainwater. But you have these really like boggy subalpine ponds. They're really kind of creepy, super misty and just like covered in moss. And some in our area that we've explored have these giant holes that just drop down, like perfectly circular holes that just drop down in the middle of the pond. Huh. Super dark tinted water, really kind of creepy. We've explored a couple. Actually, the Wano have some really, that's a whole nother episode, some really interesting stories about evil lakes. I won't get into that now. But anyways, this guy described his lake that he would always pass over. Every time he flew, he'd fly over this lake.
He knew the lake.
And he called it Dino Lake.
Yeah.
And we're like, Dino Lake? Like, ooh, tell us more. He was like, I flew for 30 years. I passed this lake all the time. And he was like, it was crazy how often there was a giant wake in the pond. There's no currents. It's just like a lake.
And there's no
he's
people,
like, there's
no
like a
boats,
giant
nothing.
wake. He's like, there's a giant like ripple. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I just don't know. There's just a ripple. But he's like, one time I was flying over it and I saw something in the lake. He's like, it was like the size of like a VW bug, like the size of a car, small car, black, round, almost looked like a giant stone, like a giant rock
shiny,
in the lake. And it had like a smooth black back. And so it like almost like, reflected the sun. And it totally caught his eye because he's flown over this lake a million times.
There's nothing in the lake.
There's nothing in the lake. And
always,
he saw something. He was like, what is that? And when he returned, but you only see it for a little bit and you keep going. On the way back, it was gone. But he would continue to see ripples and wakes in this lake. And it's like,
dude,
like, what is that? So he always just, and this is, again, he is like the most like straight face,
no
like,
nonsense. Like
he doesn't use colorful adjectives. Like he just tells you how it is. Very quiet man. But he called this Dino Lake. And so we were just like, whoa, if you call this Dino Lake, there's something there.
That wasn't connected to the Dark Triangle and the Beludok.
No,
but
totally
that was
different
independent
location
of this guy. But his photograph that he got, when he said he got that, and he was like, of course, I don't even know if I got it. The cameras are crappy back then, blurry. Yeah. He was like, I don't even know. He
said he had the picture.
Get us this picture. Like, can you find it? And he's like, I have no idea if I even have it. So since then, we've tried to track him down and get that, and
I'm currently actually dogging him. I just pulled up an old email address that I got from some of his coworkers, and I'm trying to reach out. He's not on social, so I'll let you guys know if I track him down and get this picture.
Our best from our research, though, if there is a living dinosaur out there, and it'd be the discovery of the century in terms of like, to find a new lizard is a big deal. Like if you find a new gecko, like that's like huge. That's like breaking news. But to find a lizard that would be larger and heavier than the Komodo dragon would like shake up everything, because apart from, crocodiles, it just doesn't exist. And so when we found out about the Megalania, I don't know if you want to pull up a picture, but that's the closest by all accounts. I think it's called Megalania. It's like a prehistoric Komodo dragon. And that's basically what this
from Australia.
From Australia. That's where all the fossils, the bones are. I think it's called the Megalania. But that, if you want to pull that up for the viewers, that would probably be the closest thing to this.
Yeah. Look at it standing up there.
Yeah.
It's basically it's an Nephilim Komodo dragon.
Dude.
Massive.
And what's interesting too is, it was just back, I want to say like 60s or 70s. Like a dude in Indonesia was walking by the fish market and found a coelacanth, six-finned fish. Yeah. They only found fossils of these things. They thought they were extinct. And here he is, one in a fish market. So sure enough, the coelacanth is discovered and is in Indonesia.
Still living.
Yeah. There's areas that we've been where you can catch them. They're down there. And so people thought, millions of years ago, these things were our ancestors. They had these 6-lobe fins, and they eventually had created appendages and walked on land. Turns out the coelacanth is still alive. It lives super deep, so there's no way it's
in the fish market.
No way it's coming up on land.
Someone's eating it. Like, there's dinner.
And they're like, stink. And so instead of recanting, they're like, I can't believe it's lasted this long.
Millions of years.
That was the next thing. You're just like, what?
But it just goes to show that there's like fossils that we found and creatures that still exist today. And Beludok could be, a living dinosaur.
Are you guys kind of hush about this because this is a future project? Are you gonna go back? That's probably what I'm inferring here.
Yeah. But we're some of the only the only people in the world that actually know that this thing exists and its location and how to get there.
And you have the ability to have access, which is like a whole nother bar of.
I mean, there's a lot of red tape.
But
it's
just like we were talking earlier about the thylacine, and this was a discussion we had way back then. If we do find a thylacine, what do we do with the information? Because there's still indigenous peoples that live in these areas, and that kind of exposure could ruin a culture, could ruin a people group with the government could come in and say, like, you got, like, leave your land, like, this is now a conservation zone, or the press, or, like, who knows what kind of exploitation could come of that.
Crazy YouTubers. I mean, you name it.
Yeah, right,
like,
yeah.
Seriously.
So we've always thought if we do go back and film, everything has to be kind of, like, secretive, and we don't disclose any locations. I don't know. We've talked a lot about how to go about the right way.
It's not easy, but yeah.
That'll be a project down the road.
But it is interesting. It does make you wonder. And again, because these areas like Papua, I mean, such a low population. You're looking at this massive island. It's all lush and beautiful. Like, there's so much room for creatures, and there's hardly any people.
Well, it's like Jurassic Park.
It's like that's right. It makes sense that there could be things out there. You know?
The top of the canopy is so thick that it's impenetrable to see through it via plane or helicopter.
Yeah.
Like, some places, like my father-in-law lives up in Montana.
Yeah.
He has neighbors that, the wolves are so bad getting their cattle, they'll go take a helicopter and, like, shoot the wolves, It's like, well, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But there's pine trees, and, like, you can see through them, and you can see animal life. You can
find animals,
Like, you can't do that in the jungle. It's so dense, you actually have to be on foot. And to even get on foot, like, a helicopter, you can't even penetrate that jungle.
So there's like a major expedition just to get in there.
It's, like, deep in there, but it is possible.
How big is the canopy from, like, the floor to the top, you think?
It can be high. It can be upwards to like 60.
Well, the thing about Papua too is that there's no seasons. Right. So the trees, they're never stunted in their growth. They're always growing. So they're massive. It's like avatar trees, huge ironwood trees. So
some of the trees, like giant lizards,
root trees. They have these giant, like, fin roots that are like 8 foot tall. It's almost like a giant wall.
Like huge
it's like
trees,
super
beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
just some epic places out there. But yeah, I mean, I think if there's one thing we've learned, it's like the world is vast, the world is blurry. There's a lot of unknowns out there, and I think when the Lord commissioned Adam to, like, go out and, like, name all the animals, I think it's almost kind of a mandate or a commission that, like, we're still fulfilling today. Like, we're still growing up. We found all kinds of stuff that science hadn't found yet, and so I think there's still mystery and discovery to be had. It just takes going and seeking them out.
I love it, boys.
The blurry beetle. You gonna find it?
They already found the blurry beetle.
No.
And next one we find, we'll have to name it. You guys.
Unfound.
Blurry creature.
We got to get you guys out. We got to get you guys out in the field, out of the studio into the field.
Well, we're gonna have to do another one because there's another rodeo for the trilogy. I think because there's this whole bunch of stuff we haven't touched on, supernatural things and evil lakes and islands of zombies. And
well, I mean,
if
your listeners are interested, just hit us up and we can come back to the blurry basement. This has been really fun, guys.
Yeah.
Well, maybe next time we'll have to bring some visuals, some props.
Do it.
Yeah.
Well, tell our listeners again, like, where they can find your work, because you guys are doing documentaries and you guys have a channel where they can interact with what you're doing. You've got a vibrant community there.
Yeah. There's the Wild Brothers TV app is probably the place to go. We're really curating kind of the largest compilation of Great Commission resources. So a lot of our own original content, reality TV documentaries, but also curating content from others and trying to build a community that's, again, normalizing the Great Commission, empowering families to get off their couches in creation.
Yeah, getting families excited about adventure. Because one thing that we've seen is that, like, to be a believer, like, life is hard. Christ promises hardship, and we want to have families that are resilient. And I think resilience starts with, in your childhood, getting outside and having fun and discovering new things and getting outside of your comfort zone. Like, a lot of that character can be fostered in when you're just a little guy. And so we try to make kid-friendly family adventure content with kind of that overarching theme of Great Commissions. Awesome. But look us up on Wild Brothers TV. Obviously, we have our YouTube and socials.
Our dad has, again, published a book. A lot of the first episode, and even some of the things we touched on this episode, are actually there in his own autobiography. So it kind of captures the first 5 years of church planting among this animistic people, and again finding family at the ends of the earth. So it's a great place to start.
And a lot of our own original content, we've documented these adventures. So like Tiger Trails. It's all about
Tasmanian
tiger, like 4 years of research. So you can go see us. We're like a lot younger and smaller, but out there with our cameras, and it's pretty stellar. Morgan, like, he's a great videographer and editor. So when he was like 16, he put together this whole reality TV show called Jungle Kids, and it's still popular today.
Yeah, it is nominated for awards at the NRB this week. So we'll see if we win.
Congrats.
Let's go.
Yeah. Finally getting some. We just haven't put it in. And
you guys are younger guys. Have you seen Point Break, the original one?
No.
Oh man, never mind. I just think about your dad. Like if a surfer Bodie becomes a bank robber, his life could have been a different trajectory if he decided to be a missionary.
That's
right. Well, it's Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
Swayze is Bodie. Nice. He's a surfer who decides to become a bank robber.
If only he became a missionary.
He'd have seen some wild things in Indonesia.
Alternate.
Well, thanks, dudes.
Thanks for
having us.
We'll do it again.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Let's do it.